Welcome to 1 Hour, One Topic from Self to System series. In this series, we'll explore practical skills that influence how we work together and how we communicate, how we build trust, and how we handle disagreement, and how we get things done. Inspired by the books How to Win Friends and Influence People and The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, each session will focus on 1 mindset and 3 observable behaviors that you can practice in real life situations. Throughout today's session, I'm going to invite you to pause and reflect. I encourage you to have a journal ready, paper or digital, whatever works best for you. Across this series, we'll move through a progression that starts with self, expands to team, and then expands to the organization. Each session will move along this path and build on the last, but it is designed to stand on its own. You can join at any point without feeling behind. The idea here is not to agree with everything or to take everything with you, but to notice what resonates with you. The intention is then for you to share what resonates with you, knowing that insight spreads through conversation. We will not be recording this session live, so you can freely share your thoughts and experiences. I have previously recorded this version so that others who are not able to make it to the live session will still be able to be part of the experience. I will be anonymously sharing any great ideas or resources that are shared in the chat on our SharePoint page. Now, time to pick up your journals. Journaling is like a secret tool for your brain. One of the reasons journaling is so powerful is that by writing down our thoughts, we can make different connections in our brain than we can by just thinking them. Research from the University of Texas found that there is a 15% increase in your working memory when you use expressive writing. And a study at the Dominican University of California found that people who wrote down their goals were 42% more likely to achieve them. Now, I'll be honest, I'm a pencil girly, so my first question was, is paper better than a digital journal? The answer is kind of, but not really. Handwriting does seem to have a slight edge for deeper processing, but because typing is faster than handwriting, you can actually have more reflection overall. So the real takeaway is not paper better than digital, it's that writing itself is better than not writing. So the best method is the one you'll actually use. Before this session, you were sent this prompt to think about. Think of a recent situation at work or in your personal life where you felt frustrated, defensive, or stuck. As you look back, where did you have more choice than you initially realized? When we look back at situations where we felt frustrated, defensive, and stuck, there are almost always more choice than we could see at the time. That doesn't actually mean we missed something obvious or that we did something wrong. It means that there are very real things that get in the way of recognizing choice in the moment. Emotional activation, role expectations, habits, and fear of consequences can all play a part in feeling like our choices are narrowed or even taken away from us entirely. Take a moment to look back at your reflection. Are there any of these that are present for you? Responsibility doesn't mean we need to control everything. It means we're willing to notice the choices that are still available, even when they're small, when they're uncomfortable, and when they're quiet. We talked about our mindset. Responsibility comes before results. Now, how do we make these things tangible? Behaviors. Our first behavior is pause before responding. And I mean that's literally taking a breath before replying to an email or a comment or a Teams message actually changes what happens in your body. Deep breathing lowers blood pressure and calms the nervous system. When we're emotionally activated, our brain shifts into fight or flight. Pausing to breathe can physically interrupt that reaction and help the brain move out of threat mode. One of my yoga teachers, the ultimate deep breathing guru, used to talk about the very top of the breath. When you inhale, you have that top of the breath before you exhale. That tiny pause, she would say, that's where the pause where choice lives. That really sticks with me. When we think about the pause, that's not just time to think, but it's a physical reset. It creates space for options. That's the moment where we can move from reaction mode to the pause to a grounded response. This matters because of emotional activation, because of those role expectations, our built-in habits, and our fear of consequences that all tend to collapse without that pause. We react because we feel pressure. We react because of habit. We stay silent or overly defensive because of how we think we're supposed to behave in our role, or because we're worried about the outcome. Pausing doesn't remove those factors, but it gives us enough space to notice them and to choose how we respond instead of letting them choose us. Breathing is one way to pause, but it's not the only one. Another option is to ask a clarifying question. Asking someone to elaborate gives you more information and it creates time. Sometimes the triggering moment was based on a misunderstanding. And even when it isn't, the pause helps your nervous system settle. And sometimes the most responsible pause is simply saying, I want to think about that and get back to you. That stops the interaction that is not going well and creates space for a more grounded follow-up later. Pausing doesn't mean avoiding responsibility. It's often the most responsible thing we can do because it gives us access to better responses and ultimately better choices and better results. If this is resonating with you, I would love for you to share. If you're watching this recording, I would love for you to write in your journal and think about, when are those times when I could have paused? What are other kinds of pauses? We've talked about breathing, we've talked about clarifying questions, and we've talked about taking time and having that space. Maybe there's a situation you could journal about where a pause would have been helpful. Our second behavior is name your part. This is about ownership, not blame. Naming your part means being willing to say things like, I didn't communicate that clearly. I should have followed up sooner. I can see now that my response made this more difficult. What's important here is that you're naming your part. It doesn't mean you caused the entire situation. It means you are taking responsibility for the piece that was actually yours. This behavior can be surprisingly hard because the same things that narrow your choices get in the way here. Emotional activation can make us defensive. Role expectations can tell us that admitting anything will weaken our position. And habit might push us towards explaining or justifying instead of owning. And a fear of consequences can make it feel risky to say anything at all. But naming your part is actually doing the opposite of what we fear. It lowers defensiveness, both in ourselves and others. It shifts the conversation from who is wrong to what can we do. When tensions are high, our instinct is often to look for someone else to blame. While that is human, fault finding rarely helps us move forward and can erode trust and damage teams. The shift starts with taking personal responsibility. A simple way to anchor that is to come back to the reminder of, I own my part. If something resonates with you here, I would love to hear about it. Or maybe you can write it in your journal if you're watching this recording. Our third behavior is choose a productive next step. This is where responsibility becomes action. Choosing a productive next step means asking questions like, what's the next supportive thing I can do? What's one small thing I can do that would move this forward? What's actually in my control right now? It's a shift from venting to problem solving, from focusing on what feels unfair to understanding what is possible. This behavior can also be harder than it sounds, because the same things that block us when we're frustrated also show up here. Emotional activation keep us stuck reliving the story. Role expectations make us wait for someone else to fix the problem. Habit pulls us into repeating the same conversations without changing the outcome. And fear of consequences can make any step forward feel too risky. When we choose a productive next step, we're not pretending the situation is easy or fair. We're deciding not to stay stuck there. Responsibility doesn't require having the whole plan. It asks for the next step, especially one that supports progress instead of reinforcing frustration. If something resonates with you here, I would love to hear it. What's an example of a next step that you could take in a real life situation? Add it to your journal. If we step back and look at this process as a whole, responsibility shows up as a loop, not a single moment. It starts with pausing, creating space for our nervous system to settle so that we can see we do have a choice. The pause where choice lives. From there, we name our part. Not everything, just our part. That is ownership. And then we choose our productive next step. Not the perfect step, not the whole plan, just the next supportive action that moves things forward. When we practice these three behaviors together, pause, taking ownership, and a supportive action, we move from reaction to responsibility. And that's why responsibility really does come before results. These prompts are optional. You don't need to answer all three. But if this resonates with you and you want to practice a situation, try this. Pause. Notice the moment. In a recent situation where I felt activated or stuck, frustrated, what signals did I notice in my body? What thoughts? What reactions? What kind of pause might have helped? The second step, name your part. This is ownership without blame. Looking back at that situation, what part was mine to own without explaining, defending, or taking on more than your part? And step 3, choose a productive next step. This is where responsibility turns into actions. What is one small supportive next step I can take within my control that would move the situation forward? I would love to know what you think about this process and your feedback on how this goes for you.